Coming up in this episode of iCantCU, I'll tell you the difference between walking out there around my neighborhood or at the mall or at a haunted house and walking out there in my backyard. Stick with me. Now I'm going to go inside and get warm.
From Studio B in Swarthmore, this is the I Can't See You podcast with David. It's like blind people for dummies.
Hello there, and welcome to another episode of I Can't See You. My name is David, at David Benj on all the socials. I'm really glad you're here for this episode, and welcome inside Studio B. Nothing much has changed, although there is a candle that is missing from behind my left shoulder near that cash register, and I don't see a sale rung up, so I'm not sure what happened to it. It was a citronella candle that kept the mosquitoes away. Not that I lit it during the summer, but just keeping the door closed, it would make it so the mosquitoes didn't like it. I do appreciate you joining me for this episode. Thank you so much. And I have one thing to talk about, and that's walking. Now, as I've talked about many, many times, I like to walk a lot, and I don't stand still for a long period of time. In fact, Brian Fischler yelled at me yesterday because I was recording with him and a couple others on That Real Blind Tech Show, and it sometimes took me a minute because I was caught off guard that they were going to come to me first, and I might have been over there, or I might have been over there. Now, I'm not too far from the microphone because I'm tethered with the headset, so I can go maybe 4 feet that way to my left and maybe 4 feet that way to my right. So round trip, it's only 10 or 15 steps. But I did get over 4,000 steps while I was podcasting with them last night. It is a big, big difference when I am walking around the neighborhood or to the train station in Swarthmore, because when I use my cane, I have to constantly be sweeping back and forth. And when I sweep back and forth, sometimes it hits things, it gets stuck in the gaps between the sidewalks, the expansion joints, if you will. And there's something on That Real Blind Tech Show's next episode about that. So I don't know that I'll have a link for it for the show notes, but just go check out That Real Blind Tech Show, and the next episode, I'm sure it's going to have the word tip in the title, but check that out. But just walking around, my legs don't get tired. My feet don't hurt or get tired. It's my hands that really start to kill, and what makes it hard for me to walk a lot outside of my house. I walk around with Liz sometimes with Ziggy, and she doesn't hold on to me there. So I'm sweeping back and forth while she's holding on to Ziggy and in front of me, and she'll shout out tree branch on the left or uneven, or sometimes there's a couple of spots where the roots of the tree have lifted one side of the sidewalk. And that makes it really painful when my cane hits that, because when I walk around my neighborhood, especially, I have Nigel with me. Nigel is a very lightweight, non-foldable cane. When I'm usually going someplace, when I went to New York for Laugh for Sight, whenever I travel, I take Jackie with me. That's the one that has the little Jackie Robinson baseball bat on it. And that cane is a little heavier, but the nice thing about that cane, when it hits one of those joints in the sidewalk, or it hits something that stops it in its place, the handle has a spring in it, so my hand goes in. It doesn't just hit it and then send a shock wave up my arm, kill my wrist, kill my hand. So walking a lot with the cane is very tiring to me. And walking around when I'm on the sidewalks, whether it was in New York City last week or it was somewhere else, it's also mentally exhausting because I am concentrating so hard on listening, on using what little vision I have to see if there's something going on. And especially in New York, where the sidewalks may be crowded, I will sometimes use what's called a pencil grip. I use the pencil grip when you're in close quarters. If somebody is not too far ahead of me, I use the pencil grip because then that just is sweeping directly in front of me. When I'm walking normally, my arm is down to my side and the cane is fully extended, and my cane is about 58 inches long. So it's going out, so I can walk at a pretty good clip. Now, it is nice when I get behind someone who is moving at a good clip. And I've talked about it before. I went to New York once on Jane's birthday a few years ago, where I got behind a woman who had boots on, they were loud boots, and she was walking quickly. It was fantastic because I could hear her, and I knew if I stayed just behind her, as long as I made all the same moves as she did, I was good to go. And I didn't actually even swipe when I did that because I knew she was right in front of me. Now, the problem was she turned off on a street before I got to where I wanted to go. So then I had to go back to using the cane. So it's very, very different when I'm walking around here in my house somewhere, whether it's in my house or in the backyard, or I'm out and about. A few weeks ago, we went to Eastern State Penitentiary for their Halloween haunted houses that they have. And there's 5 different haunted houses. And if you've never gone to that, it is a lot of fun. It starts sometime in early to mid-September. And they have a couple of weeks of preview weeks where it doesn't usually cost much or anything, depending on when you go. And it's not the same as the finished product if you go in October, for example. But when you go in October, it's like $50 to get in. So you can still get the same idea. Now, the actors who play the ghouls and goblins and witches and zombies and whatever they may be, they're still honing their spiel on, hey, this is what I'm going to say here, or this is what I'm going to do here. And when you get to them in October, they've got it down when you get to them in October, but it's a lot cheaper and you still get the same effect. And they don't have all the food things opened and drinks where you can get stuff, but it's still a lot of fun. But when we went there in September, my hands were killing me. We were there for over 2 hours and it's very uneven. So I'm constantly using my hand to feel and sweep. And I'm using the pencil grip a lot because the people in front of me are not too far in front. And there's a lot. It's not like you're walking down these straight lanes. For part of the prison it is, but for the most part, you're weaving through stuff, through their displays and whatever they've got. And this year, again, it was very, very cool. They had this 3D stuff going on where the walls were black. They had a black light up and they gave you 3D glasses. I didn't take the 3D glasses because they don't work for me. But I was with someone named Owen who was kind of guiding me through. And Owen is part of the Philly Meetup for the Blind group. He's one of the sighted folks. He was describing everything to me and how it looked like the stuff was coming off the walls and stuff like that. It just sounded very cool. And I could see in the spots where they were fluorescent items, I could kind of see the glowing things of those on the walls. And it just looked, that itself looked very cool. But walking around there for the over 2 hours, I kept having to switch hands. My hands hurt so much during that time there because of using my cane as much as I did. Now, it also didn't help that I took a train and a bus. So I was constantly holding my cane, not when I was on the train, but when I was on the bus, I was holding it because there was no other place to put it. I didn't fold it up there. Now, usually when I go out and about, like I said, I use the folding cane because it's just easier when I sit down at a restaurant or sit somewhere. I can break it down and it's only about maybe a foot long and it's easy to hold on to. When it's the long cane, you're constantly putting it from one shoulder to the other. It's flopping down on the floor and things like that. So it's difficult there. Now, when I go to, let's say, the mall or to Target, even when I'm on my own, those floors are so nice because they're nice and smooth and the cane just sweeps back and forth. And there's usually the only time it's trouble is when I hit something. And again, that's what the cane is for. If somebody is heading towards something, you see somebody who is using a white cane and they're heading for something, don't start shouting at them, watch out, watch out. It's okay. My cane's going to tell me that's there. And I mean, there are times that it might not, if it's something skinny like a pole, but for the most part, if it's a shelving unit or a shipping display, it's going to find it. So it's easy to walk around those even without Liz. Now, more times than not, when I go to Target or the mall or to the supermarket, Liz is with me and she's either holding on to my right arm, in which case I hold my cane with my left hand, kind of like a goaltender holds his stick in hockey, across my body diagonally from my left shoulder down to my right foot. And I'll hold it out in front of me, maybe a foot or so from my body. This way, if something is on my upper left, the cane handle will hit it. And on the right, it's not too much of a worry because Liz is on my right and she's watching what's going on. Now, in the supermarkets, a lot of times she'll get a cart and I will just follow behind. And of course, as I mentioned before, when we go to the market, we want the cart with the squeaky wheel so that I can easily follow her throughout. Now, it also sometimes she'll go to an aisle that I have no interest in and I will break off from her and go around and look for other things on my own using my cane and seeing AI to find it. But it is such a big difference between doing the sidewalk. If I'm walking to the train station in Swarthmore, I will sometimes, not all the time, but when I'm walking on a busy street on Route 320, which is Chester Road in this area, walking from my house to the train station, because I am worried the way my hands are and the way they hurt, and I sometimes drop things. I drop things a lot. My phone. Now, I do have pretty good reflexes, and I will a lot of times catch my phone. Not all the time, but a lot of times. But when I'm sweeping, I'm most worried when walking home from the train to the house because I'm sweeping to the right and the road is on my right. And if I happen to let go of the cane as I'm motioning to the right, it's going to end up out into the street. And I don't want that. So I will sometimes put the loop around my wrist just to make sure if I do let go or if it hits something and it causes me to drop it, it doesn't end up in the middle of Chester Road. And then I've got to really A, scramble to try and get it back before it gets run over, or B, not get run over, or C, leave it, and then how am I going to get home feeling my way? So I do that. Now, the flip side is when I'm here at home. Last night, like I mentioned, when I recorded with Brian, Allison, and Janine, I got over 4,000 steps in just around this desk. Now, I'm not walking fast because I can't even get a good movement going because it's such a small area. But when I'm on a Zoom call, like I was the other day with Amtrak Disabilities at a meeting, I was walking around my house and from my living room through my kitchen and so forth. When it's a nice day out, I'll walk around my backyard. And as I'm talking about it, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see my backyard is not very big. But I walk along the sidewalk area, the cement area, to where the trash can and recycling bin are, then double back and then loop around the patio area where the table is. And then I start all over again down the sidewalk and so forth. That's between 40 and 50 steps. And during a meeting, if it's an hour-long meeting, I can get well over 5,000 steps in, sometimes even more. I was on a call a week or so ago that was a quote-unquote brief meeting that lasted 2 hours. I was so mad at the length of this, and I didn't have time for it because I had several things that I had to get done. I got over 9,000 steps in. I want to say it was around 9,400 in 2 hours in my backyard during this meeting. I was infuriated by the length of this meeting. But that day I ended up walking over 19,000 steps and all was good. And I know that it is different from going to the gym or walking around the neighborhood, but I could just be sitting on my ass during a call. But I like to move around. I like to keep moving. We're getting ready to go to Erie, meaning the NFB of Pennsylvania, for the state convention, and we'll be taking a bus there. I don't know how I'm going to sit still on that bus for 8 to 10 hours. I'm just not sure how that's going to be. And I know that during the Tech and Care of Business segment that I will be moderating on Thursday afternoon from 1 to 4, I know I won't be standing still. I will be doing laps around the room because they have a wireless lapel mic. I'll clip onto my jacket and I will just walk and walk and walk. And it makes it, I don't know how many steps I'll get in, but I don't have to stand still because I'm not going to constantly be talking. Number one, there's going to be other participants that I'll be introducing and that I'll be asking questions to. It's basically going to be like a 3-hour podcast, but I will move around, and it is a very big difference there. It will be a difference there too, because there I'm going to need my cane because there's going to be other people walking around. There's going to be guide dogs there that I don't want to step on, and walking around my backyard or inside my house. Now, the one issue inside my house, if I'm walking living room, kitchen area, Ziggy sometimes lays at our vestibule, which is a tiled 4-foot by 4-foot section in between the kitchen and the living room. The problem there is the way he lays, he takes up a lot of it, a good chunk of it. And so I'm afraid that I'm going to step on him. So if he lays down there, if he plops down there, I will just stick to the living room or the kitchen and just do laps in there. Kitchen is preferred because it's got the wood floor and I can do a nice 25-step lap around the outside of the kitchen. Again, it's not a big house. It's a tiny house. Not a tiny house, but you know what I mean. So the difference between here at home or out and about is huge because, again, I could walk great distances on my legs, but because I have to use the cane when I'm out and about, my hands start to kill after a short amount of time. And if, like when I went to Eastern State Penitentiary or when I went to New York and I went to B&H Photo and I'm constantly holding the cane for a couple of hours, they start to really hurt. So by the time I got off the subway and walked over to Jane's apartment, I was ready to sit down and relax for a minute because my hands were killing me because I was holding them for so long. And there's also a little bit of a stress factor when I don't know exactly maybe where I'm going or what might be there. And I've been to Jane's apartment and I got there on my own before, but it's still different. I forgot about when you get off at her subway stop. I forgot that you come up to the landing at the top when you get to the street level, you take one step and then there's a step down. It's kind of weird. I've never seen a subway stop like that. And she didn't remind me about it when we talked the day before, and I forgot about it. I almost forgot to get off at the right stop because I couldn't hear the announcements because Charlie Brown's teacher was the one making them. And I just happened to remember that the stop that was right before her stop is a stop where the platform is in the middle, so you can go either uptown or downtown from the middle platform. Most of the subway stops, when you're going uptown, they're on the one side, you're on the outside of the track, and when you're going downtown, they're on the outside of that track. But I knew that once I saw that, I thought, oh, you know what? I think the next stop is hers. And somebody walked in front of me as the doors were about to open, and I said, is this 103rd? And he said, yep. And I followed him off. So it was all good. So it does make a difference walking around, and at least, like I said, I'm getting a little movement in. I don't count it like I'm going to the gym or swimming laps in a pool. I don't count it like that, but I'm not sitting on my ass either. At least I'm moving. And like I said, when I was on that one call and I was angry, I was moving fast. And that's the nice thing when I'm in the backyard, not so much inside the house, but when I'm in the backyard, I can walk at a decent pace, unless it's cold and there's a wind chill factor when I move at that quick pace. But just think about that when you're out and about walking, and it's helpful for me when I'm with someone sighted, Jane or Liz. In fact, Jane and I went to grab some pizza from a place called Mama's 2, which is just around the corner from her apartment. It's evidently trendy on TikTok now. And it was very good. So if you're in that ballpark, if they have one there, and I forget where she said the other one is. So Upper West Side, and I don't remember the other one. Really good. Get slices of pizza. I think we got 5 slices of pizza. It was $35. So yeah, $7 a slice, but they were big slices and mostly Sicilian, the thick kind. We did get one piece of, I don't remember if they called it plain, whatever they called it. They were all really good. They were all really good. But when we were walking, I asked her to grab my arm because at that point it was dark out and there were a lot of lights. We walked past an ambulance that had its lights flashing, and I have a little bit of vision, but when it's dark and there's lights shining in my face, it all goes away. So at that point I have to be very tentative. I walk very slowly, and it just takes me longer and I get frustrated by it. But when Jane or Liz are holding on and they're guiding me and they'll say, okay, you've got, slight step or ramp as we cross a street, it makes it a lot easier. And I know that I can move quickly because they're watching where they're going. So they're telling me if there's something in the way. And, and I should add that Jane almost seems like a native New Yorker, the way she bitches and moans at people who just stop in the middle of the sidewalk. And it is unbelievable when they do that. People will just stop as they're talking to one another. Oh, do we want to go this way? Do we want to go that way? Don't stop right in the middle. Move to the side and get out of our way. And that's Jane will tell them in an angry Hernandez tone. But it makes it a lot easier, obviously, when it's like that. Two things I wanted to mention. It'll be a couple of weeks before I have another episode out. I know I have not been very good on getting an episode out a week, but I'll be heading to Erie, Pennsylvania this week, which, as I mentioned before, it's where I live and where Erie is. It's the statewide equivalent of Miami to Seattle. And we'll be on a bus for 8 to 10 hours. And I have some things planned. So I'm kind of excited to see how the people react to what I have planned for the bus. We're not going to sing 99 bottles of beer on the wall because I think it would be like 999,000 bottles of beer on the wall to get from Philadelphia to Erie. But I do have a couple things planned and I'll talk about it in a couple of weeks. I'll let you know what went on because it should be both fun and interesting. We'll see how things go. But the other thing I wanted to mention is episode 114 of White Canes Connect. We talked to Crystal Boateng, and she is an author of kids' books that are large print. Some of them, they come out in two versions. She's got 4 books out. So in reality, she's got 8 books out because they're large print, very large print. And there's 4 that have a high contrast black text on a white background, and then reversed contrast, black background with white text, which is, if I'm going to see anything, when I look on my computer, that's how I have my computer set up, because again, any kind of glare will make it impossible to read. And again, it's getting to the point where even that doesn't help as much, and I still need a screen reader to tell me what I'm looking at. So we talked to her, and I'll have a link in the show notes. It's episode 114 of White Canes Connect. I actually bought one of the books to put into the Keystone chapter auction basket for the Friday night fundraiser in Erie. We have a lot of cool things in there. We have Braille Uno, a Braille blind Barbie. We've got blindfolded Twister, and we've got large print Scrabble and large print playing cards. So it should be interesting to see how much that goes for. Excited for that. The auction is always my favorite part of the convention. Denise Brown is the one who does the auction, and it's just a lot of fun. It is a whole lot of fun. So again, episode 114, it'll be in the show notes, the link to it, as well as a link to Crystal's website where you can buy the books or even have a look at them. It's nice to promote someone. And if I ever get things back on track with blind bosses, she is one that I will certainly have on because she is a blind boss, and she went to George Washington, and she was planning to do some other things. And listen to episode 114. You can learn more about her. So that'll do it for this episode of iCantCU. I really do appreciate listening or watching if you're on YouTube. Please reach out to me, iCantCUpodcast@gmail.com, iCantCUpodcast@gmail.com. Let me know what you've got going on. If you've got questions, comments, show ideas, anything you've got, I'd love to hear from you. You could also reach out via phone, 646-926-6350. You've got up to 3 minutes to let me know what your question, comment, show idea, or tip is. If you have an idea of doing something around your house or out and about, if you can tell me how my hands won't hurt after using my cane for a couple of hours out on the streets, I would love to hear it. Again, 646-926-6350. Connect with me also on social media at David Benj on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, Threads, X, same as Twitter, or on YouTube if you just want to listen. And I know most people don't listen to the podcast on there. In fact, usually if I get 1 or 2 views, quote unquote views, because it's just a static image and the audio. But you can, if you're curious to see the cool intro that I did for this episode, or you want to see what my backyard looks like, head over to youtube.com/the iCantCU, and you can watch these episodes, B-roll and all, over there on YouTube. As always, the show notes are available over on the website, iCantCU.com/274, iCantCU.com/274, numerically speaking. And remember, iCantCU sounds like a whole sentence, but it's only 7 characters long. iCantCU.com/274. Thanks again for watching and listening. Be well, stay safe, and I'll talk to you in the next episode.
Thank you for listening to the iCantCU podcast with David. Please rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen. And don't forget to share the podcast with your friends.